I'm telling you this because I need you to feel it with me. Not to make you sad for me, but so someone else, maybe sitting alone at 2 a.m., knows they're not the only one who's cracked and still holding the pieces. You ever wake up and feel like you're living someone else's life? Like you're reading a book you don't remember buying? That's where I started. I used to be loud. I used to laugh so loud my friends would tell me to chill, like that was a bad thing. I had corners of my brain that held big dreams, places I wanted to go, songs I wanted to scream at the top of my lungs, things I wanted to build. I believed in me the way kids believe in Santa, naive and pure and unshakable. Then the slow erosion began. Not explosive, not dramatic, no big fight, no headline betrayal. Just tiny things, one after another, until the person I was, the one who used to show up for every plan and every stupid midnight idea, started missing. He was not a villain. That's important. This story ain't about trashing someone so I could be a martyr. He was warm most days. He texted first sometimes. He showed up with coffee and weird, too sweet candy because he thought I liked it. He made space for me in his life, and for a while, I felt held. That's why it mattered so much when things slipped. Because it wasn't supposed to be dramatic. It was supposed to be steady. At first, it was small. The late replies, the sorry busy that became constant, the canceled plans that turned into a pattern. I'd tell myself he was stressed, working hard, dealing with family, normal adult stuff. I'd stay up waiting for a text that didn't come and then excuse it away. I am ashamed to say I defended him. To my friends, my sister, even to myself. He's just tired. He'll come back around. He's dealing, cut him some slack. The truth? I was hungry for proof that I mattered. I was addicted to proof. If he took time, I would shine on whatever proof he left behind. A text in the morning. A late night phone call. A meme he knew I'd laugh at. I collected crumbs and called them a meal. There's a certain quiet cruelty to that. The way you start shrinking, not because someone told you to, but because you begin to choose silence over asking for your worth. You start to edit yourself. You stop ordering the thing you actually wanted at dinner. You stop saying what you think. You laugh at jokes that don't land. I started dimming my colors until I wasn't bright enough to notice. One night, I remember like it was a scene from a movie. I was in my car, engine off, phone in my hand, parked under a street lamp that buzzed like it was about to go out. My face was lit blue from the screen. I played a playlist that used to make me feel alive, and just let it break me. Ugly cry, the kind where you can't breathe right and your chest feels like someone is squeezing a fist around it. I kept asking the universe, what did I do wrong? I whispered that question over and over until it felt like a prayer. I felt stupid for expecting answers. I felt ashamed for wanting them. I told myself I was being dramatic. That's the mess. You start policing your feelings like you did something offensive just by having them. I told one of my friends about that night and she got quiet. Not judgmental, just quiet like she was seeing the version of me I'd been hiding. Her silence was kinder than any platitude. After that, I started to see how expertly I'd been pretending. I could do the brunch laugh with my girls, be the one making dumb faces for photos, talk about work like everything was normal. Then later, in the mirror, I would press the heels of my hands into my eyes and try to find the girl who used to have that reckless light. Home felt smaller, not because the apartment changed, but because I carried this hollow with me everywhere I went. My mom, she noticed. Moms have a way of seeing cracks before you do. She'll walk over and touch your arm, pretend to check for bruises, and then ask, "You good, baby?" With that tone that's not a question. One night I told her, because she asked, and I spilled more than I meant to. She didn't say, "I told you so." She didn't say, "Leave him." She just said, "Come home." And when I went, I watched her hold a phone the way I did, like she was waiting for a message that might never come, and suddenly my pain wasn't mine alone. Our house folded around both of us, soft and warm and quietly tired. There's a bottom, but it's not a cliff. It's more like a sinkhole you don't notice until you're in it and the edges have crumbled. For me, the bottom was a Tuesday. No special date, no big event. I was at work, halfway through a meeting, pretending to focus, nodding like it mattered. My phone buzzed. I saw his name and for a second calm. I should have felt relief. Instead, my hands got cold. He said, "We need to talk." They're such neutral words, but when they're aimed at you, they explode like fireworks. I felt every year of my life compress into that 3-second sentence. We need to talk. I remember the room as if someone else painted it gray. People were talking about spreadsheets. Someone laughed at a joke. My mouth tasted like pennies. I walked out of the meeting, put on my headphones, turned the music loud, and cried in the stairwell. When I finally heard him, it wasn't dramatic. He said he'd been distant because he was figuring out what he wanted. He said he didn't want to string me along. He said he liked me a lot, but felt overwhelmed. He said he didn't think he could be what I needed right now. He said I deserved someone fully in it. Those words sounded like mercy at first, and that confused me. I'm not here to tell you that he was cruel. He wasn't. He was human. He was confused. He used honesty as a bandage. But what it did for me was leave a raw place open where the apology missed. It wasn't about blaming him. It was about how his honesty forced me to confront my own self-abandonment. After that talk, the world did not stop. Coffee still got made. My boss still wanted the quarterly report. Friends messaged memes. Life kept moving like it didn't know I'd been split open. That dissonance hurt. I would sit at kitchen counters and laugh at something dumb and then go home and stare at the same damn wall for an hour, wondering who I'd been keeping myself from. Here's where the real damage sits, when you internalize the idea that needing somebody is a weakness. I started thinking that asking for time, for attention, for love, was me being needy. Social media told me the glow up. Friends told me to move on, but nobody told me how to reknit myself. There were nights I would scroll through photos of us, not to torture myself, but like a ritual. I'd look at a picture where he's mid-laugh and his teeth show, and I'd try to measure which parts were mine and which were his. I'd keep a playlist of songs that hurt and comforted the same way, like Vinegar and Sugar. I learned songs that felt like confessionals, and I let them play until I felt wrung out. Slow healing is not glamorous. People post their transformations with captions like, "From broken to boss," and cute gym photos, but the inside work is not photogenic. It's messy and full of nights where you walk the city alone, just to be surrounded by lights and people and the feeling that you're invisible but not alone. It's therapy where you say the same sentence 5 different ways until it loses its weight. It's writing unsent letters and then burning them, not because it's symbolic, but because you need to let the paper feel your grief and then turn it to ash. When I started to do the work, not to get over him, but to rebuild me, I had to relearn what solitude felt like without shame. Before, being alone felt like punishment. I'd call it failure. But one rain-soaked afternoon, I sat by a window with a book I hadn't finished, and I realized I liked the slow. I liked the space between plans to think. I learned to take myself out and order the meal I wanted without worrying about how it looked to an empty booth. And here's a hard one: forgiveness. Not for him, necessarily, and not because he deserved it, but for me. I forgave myself for staying. I forgave myself for wanting it to work. I forgave myself for the times I let my worth be decided by a read receipt. That forgiveness was not a single cathartic scream. It was a daily choice to say, I am not less valuable because someone could not hold me the way I needed. Friends saw the shift before I did. They sent voice notes that made me laugh. One friend literally cornered me and said, "Babe, you deserve the kind of love that drops everything and shows up." Harsh but true. I wanted to believe her, but the fear of being hurt again was like old footprints in wet cement. They left marks. Then came the day he texted like nothing happened. "Miss you." 2 words that sounded like a challenge. I could have taken the bait. I could have told a story about how he owed me, but I didn't. Instead, I read it out loud in my kitchen while I poured coffee, and I felt nothing gut-punching about it. I felt neutral. The neutrality felt like a small victory. A glow-up is not about replacing your sadness with a filtered picture. My glow-up was quieter. I started to show up to my own life. I took the art class I always talked about. I went to see my aunt in a town I'd never visited. I started saving money, not because I was planning an escape, but because I was preparing for freedom, the boring kind that matters. I started setting boundaries with friends who had a way of making everything someone else's emergency. I learned to say no without an explanation. But the healing was not linear. There were regressions. I had panic days where I called my sister crying because I'd seen him in a song, or because a restaurant seat reminded me of a joke he used to make. On those days, the compulsion to text him rose like tidewater. Every single time I didn't. I let the feeling pass. Each time it passed, it got a little quieter. I want to tell you about a night that changed me in a way that wasn't immediate. The night I let myself really grieve. It was late November, and the city smelled like baked bread and exhaust. I sat on my roof with a blanket, and I wrote the worst parts. I wrote the things I'd been embarrassed to say. I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of being second. I'm tired of losing myself. I didn't censor my words. I didn't soften them. Afterwards, I folded the paper, threw it in a small box, and shut it. I didn't burn it. I didn't send it. I stored it like a small relic of honesty. That night, nobody fixed me. Nobody had to. I sat with myself until the waves passed. That's the work. Learning to be your own shore. Months passed and I found humor again. Not hollow laughter. Real laughter, the kind that makes your ribs ache. I reconnected with friends who knew me before love made me small. I danced badly at a dive bar and didn't care who watched. I cried in a studio while trying pottery, laughing at how terrible my first bowl looked. I dated awkwardly. Some dates were painful reminders of rust. Others were soft, like discovering a door you forgot you had. One of the biggest things I learned: our stories don't belong to the people who hurt us. We don't owe them our narrative. I used to write whole chapters in my head about why he acted the way he did. I made reasons, excuses, timelines. I reduced myself to a footnote in his year. But slowly, I reclaimed the pen. Healing taught me about limits too. I started noticing how I'd given away pieces of myself in relationships before. Not only to lovers, but to jobs, to toxic friendships, to expectations. I'd been a people pleaser in the worst way, showing up in ways that weren't reciprocal, apologizing for breathing. Saying no felt radical at first, like I was committing a crime. Then it became the baseline of being treated like a human being. There is a surprising beauty in re-choosing yourself. The first time I canceled plans because I needed to sleep, I felt like I'd betrayed someone. Then I noticed how my body thanked me with better mornings. The first time I bought myself flowers, I didn't feel ridiculous. I felt ceremonious. I had survived being the main character of my own hurt, and then decided to be the main character of my healing. Now let's talk about shame. Shame is heavy. It likes to whisper that the way you loved was weakness, that your feelings were an overreaction. Shame sits in social media comments and in ex-lovers' defensiveness. I had to learn to speak back to shame. I felt, I am not broken for that. I am human. I repeated that like a mantra until it felt less like a lie and more like truth. There's also anger, and that's okay. Being calm all the time is not the goal. I allowed myself to be angry in safe spaces, with my therapist, with friends who understood, in journals where I could be ugly. Anger became a compass. It pointed to where my boundaries had been crossed. It showed me what I refused to accept now. One of the most tender things that happened was when I realized I could sit with a memory of him and feel gratitude without the sharpness. It's weird. Gratitude for the lessons without romanticizing the pain. I could look at a place where we once danced and say, that was real, but it's not mine anymore. That felt like victory, like picking flowers from a garden that's no longer mine and placing them in a vase for the life I'm building. Months turned into a year. A whole rotation of seasons. I measured progress not by forgetting, that never fully happens, but by how often my chest stayed a steady, warm place instead of toggling between fire and freeze. I found new rituals, Sunday walks, a podcast I binge, a plant I kept alive despite my track record. Small things, but they stitched me. I want to tell you about the day I finally heard myself say out loud, I love you. And this was to me. It was in a changing room of a thrift store, ridiculous and mundane. I tried on a jacket, caught my reflection, and something about the way I stood felt different. I said it quietly, almost embarrassed. I love you. I didn't mean it in a narcissistic way. I meant it in a steady, marrow-deep way. That was the day I realized I was not waiting to be saved. People will tell you it's selfish. They'll call self-care a trend. They'll post their act like you're busy stories and call it growth. Ignore the noise. Growth is private a lot of the time. It's the things you do in your apartment when no one's looking. It's the tiny promises you keep to yourself. It's also messy therapy sessions where you ugly cry and then order Thai and watch cartoons because you deserved comfort. Now, listen, I'm not here to sell a rose-tinted comeback. I still have nights where a song will hit me like a freight train. I still have days where the memory of his laugh will appear randomly, and I'll have to breathe through it. But the difference now is I have tools. I have a sister who texts me, "Where you at?" when I go quiet. I have friends who won't let me disappear. I have a therapist who helps me untangle patterns, not just symptoms. I also have boundaries. The first time I told someone I couldn't be their emotional dumping ground, I was shaking. The second time I did it, I felt braver. The 10th time, I felt like someone had handed me back my life. There's an intimacy in choosing yourself. It doesn't mean you close off. It means you enter relationships whole. You don't expect someone else to be your oxygen. You expect them to be company on the balcony of a life you built. A year after We Need to Talk, I visited a coffee shop I used to go to when we were still figuring things out. The barista smiled and remembered my order. I sat at a corner table and wrote the story you're hearing now. People moved like puzzles around me. Life was ordinary. My phone buzzed with a message from him, not a gaslight text, just a neutral check-in. I read it and felt the same calm I'd had before. I replied 2 words, "I'm good." When I hit send, I felt nothing dramatic. No gloating, no sudden closure. Just the quiet solidity of someone who learned to be her own companion. That night I went home, made dinner, called my mom, and told her about an absurdly funny documentary. She laughed. I laughed. It didn't erase the pain. It just coexisted with a life I no longer wanted to keep small. So if you're listening because you feel like me, if you're sitting in a car at midnight or staring at a ceiling and wondering why the world keeps going while your chest is in knots, please hear this. You are not alone and you are not ruined. Breakage is not the end. It's an entry point. You will be surprised by the small things that become sacred. The way sunlight hits your kitchen at 10 a.m., the stupid smell of the detergent you always thought was your mom's, the laugh of a stranger who looks like they've seen the world and is still stubbornly kind. The world will hand you soft things if you let it. I can't promise you that you won't get hurt again. People are messy. Love is messy. But I can promise you this, if you learn to love yourself first, the hits won't break you the way they used to. You'll bend, you'll learn, you'll hold on to what matters, your voice, your appetite for life, your laugh. A closing truth I learned, the person who broke you can't fix you. Only you can. And your work is beautiful, even if it feels slow, even if it's only one small victory each day. It's real. It counts. Soft pause. If you want to hear another chapter of this life, or a specific scene read slower with camera notes, I'll write it. For now, take a deep breath with me. And hold on. You're still here. That matters. And whisper. POV, the year everything broke me, and the part one kept quietly to myself.